Thank you all again for joining us. Welcome to the July edition of Ask Me Anything, hosted by Treasurer Folwell. A lot going on here at the Department of State Treasurer, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So I will turn it over to Treasurer Folwell. Treasurer?
Thank you, Frank. I apologize for being a couple minutes late. As many of you know, we have the Council of State meeting that precedes the Ask Me Anything meeting every month, and so we have a lot going on. We can obviously talk about the amount of debt we've issued recently, the performance of the pension fund, some other issues regarding local governments that you've been reading about, and obviously the thing that might be on most people's minds are the state health plan. So with that.
Thank you, Treasurer. Who would like to ask a question first? I know Dan and Dave's on here. I don't know if anybody else might have been on Make It.
Yes, hi, it's Hazel Bradford. How is everyone?
Hey, Hazel, how are you?
I'm good.
Good.
It's been a while.
It has been. I'm glad you could join us.
Yeah, I hope to be down there soon.
Good. Well, go ahead, Treasurer's listening. Hazel, go ahead and ask your question.
Well, this one is very straightforward. We're just doing our annual fiscal year returns. So I'm just checking to see when you expect to have yours out and how you expect them to look.
Thank you for your question, Hazel. We've got some preliminary numbers right now.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
Somebody does not have their phone on mute, and all I hear is heavy breathing. It's very distracting.
Yeah, if everybody could please put their phone on mute. Thank you, Hazel.
Hazel.
Sometimes heavy breathing's good, but not in this context.
It's just when somebody with pensions and investments is on the line, it's like everybody's.
I'm not that.
Everybody's heart rate goes up a little bit.
Yeah. So anyway, we're looking at. We lost somebody on that one. We're looking at preliminary numbers of over 6% for the fiscal year ended. Obviously, our calendar year numbers are higher than that. But a lot of that has been buoyed by what's happened in the fixed income market over the last fiscal year, but especially in the calendar year. And secondly, our numbers, obviously, like everybody else's, would looked a lot better, but for the drawdown in the fourth quarter associated with the stock market decline, just a reminder, doesn't matter how old I am, I have to keep telling myself this. Anytime you lose 25% of your money, you have to make 33% just to get back to where you were. That's just how math works. So we haven't lost 25% of our money, but the fact is it just took us a long time to climb out of the hole of the fourth quarter's performance.
Of fourth quarter. And so does that change what you're going to be doing or want to do going forward?
Well, it's not going to change our risk profile. Actually, our risk profile is probably going to be even more conservative. But as far as the assets in the plan, we crossed over $101 billion of assets in the plan, the first time in the state's history. So the performance, the overall assets are doing better. As far as the amount of money that's sitting in the pension plan, but as you know, and has been widely reported in Pensions and Investments and lots of other publications recently, we all have tremendous headwinds. But taking on more risk is not something that we're going to be doing.
Hazel, do you have?
Can I keep?
Yeah, please.
Can I keep going on that one?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead and follow up.
What about your overall campaign for managing more in-house?
Well, we're very excited to report that approximately 50% of the assets now are now managed in-house. 50. So we're very pleased about that, and we continue to develop our in-house capability, and we're doing it with two great co-CIOs who are Jeff Smith, who's been here for decades, who runs all the fixed income product, as well as Christopher Morris. And so the in-house management of these funds continues to go well. And when we get our numbers more cemented, Hazel, you will see that the tracking error, there probably isn't any tracking error regarding how our in-house index funds have done relative to their benchmarks, and we're super excited about that.
That's great. And do you have plans to go in other asset classes, or just to do more of the same, or what?
Well, just stay tuned on that issue. Obviously, we have a tremendous amount of money that's billions of dollars that's invested worldwide in international funds that have a higher management fee than what we probably could manage them for in-house. But as you know, as well as anybody on the call, doing in-house index managing versus international index managing with the liquidity, the taxes, the rules and regulations is two different things. We're very pleased at not only the performance of our international funds, but the renegotiated rates that we are enjoying as a result of that. We have a lot of billions of dollars in international passive types of investments.
And should we talk about these now, or are you did you get that all cleared up?
Well, we continue to cut fees. We continue to learn what is a fee and what isn't a fee. That would be a whole nother.
You could teach a class on that, I'm sure.
Yes. Did you say lead the class?
Teach it.
Teach a class, yeah.
Oh, well, they never let me do that at any point in my educational career. So my point of saying that is that we're on track now to our 4-year run rate is over $300 million in savings and Wall Street fees. It's not just the Wall Street fees. We've cut tens of millions of dollars out of just the expense of operating the investment management division. And every week somebody's bringing me a contract of a renegotiated rate where somebody was charging us $80,000 for something and now it's $50,000. Or we're learning that we may have been paying that on the second floor of this building and the first floor of this building in our defined contribution products. So we're trying to take advantage of our largeness, not just by talking about it, but taking advantage of it in this very building.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hazel. Dan, are you on? You got a question?
Yeah, thanks. It's nice to talk to you guys again. Yeah, I'm curious, as I'm sure you can imagine, about the healthcare network.
Obviously, Dan Goldberg, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, because we got another Dan there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. Well, it's like I think of Dan Way. Sorry, I didn't realize we had more than one Dan. Go ahead, Treasurer.
Oh, go ahead and finish your question, Mr. Goldberg.
Yeah, so the network, when last we spoke, did not have any major hospitals in it, and you were talking about possible consumer protections, but it does seem, and I hope you can forgive my candor, but it seems hard to imagine a network that's going to include state lawmakers that doesn't have any major hospital system in it.
Well, obviously, we are excited that we have stood up for the first time something called the North Carolina State Health Plan Network. We're excited that when you add it all up, and it's complicated because we have single signatories who may represent dozens or hundreds or even thousands of doctors that's now being completely reconciled. But we think that we're approaching, when all that's said and done, somewhere close to 25,000 providers of healthcare in North Carolina across all specialties, some better represented than others, who have signed on to more transparency, given the control of the consumer and lowering healthcare costs. We are totally focused on the question at hand about these major hospital systems and their obvious, in my opinion, strategy to stick together when each one of them has a responsibility, and each one of those systems has a board of trustees who has the same fiduciary responsibilities that I do as a state treasurer, both to that particular facility and the community they serve in. So stay tuned for our next steps.
Dan,
Is there anything you can detail on the any kind of consumer protections?
Well, you're as knowledgeable about that as anyone else is in the country because of everything that's coming down from Washington, everything that's happening on surprise billing, both federal legislation, legislation in North Carolina North Carolina legislature about out-of-network billing, surprise billing, and all these other things. So a lot of that is going to be shaking out, in my opinion, over the last 2 weeks. I'm confident about three major things, Dan. Number one is that people don't consume health care, it consumes them. And they're no longer going to stand for 20% of their income going towards something they don't understand. Number two, in terms of your question about consumer protection, I'll be 61 years old, and when I was growing up, credit scores didn't matter as much as they do now. Credit scores in today's world can determine whether a poor person gets upward mobility in their life. It may affect their cell phone bill, it may affect their basic liability insurance, for what they pay for a car, which they use to get their butts back and forth to work so they can get upward mobility. And one of the leading causes of bankruptcies is bankruptcies associated with medical billing. And then, of course, the third thing, which I've said to all of you in the past, as far as the state health plan is concerned, we have a fiduciary responsibility to be loyal and exercise the duty of care to our participants. And we have done, and we will continue to do that by telling the truth and doing the right thing. We think that doing the right thing is to get to reference-based pricing. Second phase of this is to do more bundling, not just in my vernacular carpentry, which is knees, hips, and rotator cuffs, but also into the plumbing, also into the electrical. Somebody presented a paper that they did 30 years ago, one of the leading cardiac surgeons in the United States, 30 years ago, about bundling of cardiac type services. And I mean, in Raleigh, North Carolina, Dan, we have literally, I can't prove this to you, this is anecdotal, we have people who provide the same procedure on the same road right across the street from each other, and the reimbursement rates for one is far different than it is for the other. So my third thing, which I didn't quite put a bow on, is this. We have enough money, we have enough providers, we have enough medical needs within the largest purchaser of health care in this state that we ought to be able to figure it out. We have figured it out with nearly 25,000 people signing on to clear pricing. I couldn't be more proud of that number, and I couldn't be more proud of the team that helped us produce that number. But
if I can sneak in one more, I just want to be clear. Bundling is a little bit different than sort of a reference pricing. It's a little bit more of, in some cases, what I've heard some of the health providers in North Carolina talk about, that you would get a set price for a suite of services in a bypass or a pregnancy. That's a little bit different than just an X percent of Medicare. Is that a tactical change? Is there some room for negotiation on that, or is that something that you've always held and I've just missed it?
Something that we've always said and you just missed it. We have said from the very beginning. I'm sorry, I know you're not used to somebody from North Carolina talking to you that way. But
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm from New York.
I know, that's why I said that. My point is saying that, Dan, we have said from the very beginning that clear pricing was not just about reference-based pricing. It had several different stages to it. Number one is reference-based pricing, because you can't cut the cost of anything until you know what it costs. Number two is more bundling. We've always said this. Number three is alternative payment arrangements. So this reference-based pricing, this deadline that was last week during the week of July 4th, is not the end of anything. It's just the beginning of the evolution of the state health plan taking advantage of its buying power on behalf of people who teach and people who protect and people who serve our citizens.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate your questions. Another question for the treasurer?
This is Taft Lyback with the News and Record in Greensboro. Treasurer, I'd like to ask you if there are any more than the 3 hospitals that were initially announced as having been privy to the CPP. I think it was Randolph Hospital and one place in Durham and one place in Williamston. Have you got any more to acquiesce?
We haven't. There's obviously people who the contract period is ended. We are continuing to field questions from some of these major providers. Thank you for joining us, Taff. And
Sure.
I would say that, because you're in the backyard of Cone Hospital, which after the merger with Wesley Long has a monopoly in Guilford County, we're not saddened or surprised by their decision not to provide health care to hardworking state employees and retirees. But I just ask you rhetorically, what business in Greensboro would turn down an amount of profit that we're offering these entities unless no one knew what they were paying to start with? That's the only reason you would turn that down, because nobody knew what they were paying to start with. And I'll tell you that in case you don't know this about me, I went to the elite university of UNC Greensboro, and our health.
Good for you.
Yes.
Congratulations. I did too.
Yes. Our healthcare costs are going up at 6%. Our prescription drug costs are going up nearly double digit. And the great accounting and finance department at UNCG taught me that there's no combination of those two numbers that will get us to what the amount that's being appropriated to us by either the governor or the General Assembly. So we're just living within our means. Furthermore, specific to Greensboro, the comment came out from the CEO of that company that, threatening citizens with reduced services. We're just trying to take prices down to what they were charging us 2 years ago, as far as we can tell. But, it's always been the association's message that he's the secretary of, that these hospitals will never accept clear pricing, which brings transparency to healthcare. And whether it's the president's executive order regarding surprise billing and healthcare and opaque healthcare cost and opaque billing, or the average citizen, everyone knows that there's something wrong with this system.
Who are you talking with on the other side of this issue? I mean, do you have regular interaction with Cone Health executives, either the CEO or somebody that you talk with, and kind of figure out what the different positions are and where you might be able to reach some agreement?
We have answered every call, we've addressed every email, and we have attended every meeting that we have been invited to having anything to do with Cone Health over the last 12 months. We were sort of chastised in a health committee meeting late last year, early this year, by the president of Cone Health about, pleading with us to come and see him. This is documented. The whole state health plan contract team went to Cone Health to meet with the executives of Cone Health weeks, if not months, before he made that comment, and he didn't know that had actually happened. So once again, we have answered every phone call, addressed every email, and attended every meeting that we have been invited to.
Yeah, I just wondered what the back and forth was. I mean, is there regular routine discussions, or are you just kind of lobbing competing news releases back and forth to the general public?
Well, actually, we don't issue a news release unless we're reacting to something that somebody is. Once again, they attack people, we attack problems. That's the difference in the two. Secondly, and just to be absolutely clear about this, is that it doesn't matter if it's the association that speaks for all these hospitals or the individual hospitals that we met with or the associations that we met with. Just to refresh your memory, this started a year ago in this very building where we had a meeting with 42 stakeholders, and we asked a really simple question. How much inefficiency is there in the system? The smallest answer we received was 12 to 15%. That was fantastic news to us, because that's all we're looking to save out of the system. Except when we went back and directed them to come back to us with how we could operationalize those 12 to 15% savings, that's when the attack started. Crickets. And the fact is, either by email or either by a telephone call, when we came out with clear pricing, that every number that we've ever been presented is we're unable to verify. But the fact is that we're not going to continue to overpay for health care for teachers and troopers who, in my opinion, in many instances have been overpaying not just for years, but for decades. If we were to do that, I'd be advocating my fiduciary responsibility and as being loyal and exercising a duty of care to these participants. And we're talking about Guilford Tech. We're talking about Guilford County School Systems, UNCG, North Carolina A&T, all these other entities just in your surrounding readership.
Yeah.
And by the way, Taff, I've never come to downtown Greensboro without attempting to come by your newspaper to inform your folks about all the progress that we've been making on this and how it specifically relates to Guilford County. Even when the one-way streets are closed down and I have to go around the block.
I hope we were receptive.
We've never been given an audience.
We talked to Alan.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to Alan one time on the phone, but that's
We
it.
sat down with him.
And sat down with him a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Taff, do you have any follow-ups?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I appreciate it.
Taff, since you're new to our call, be sure to follow up with our team if you need clarification on anything I've said. And by the way, since I know that you're part of BHI, we have I know that you have subject matter experts in different things, and Richard Craver has been all over these stories, and I'm sure a lot of that goes back and forth between your paper and his.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, Taff, if you have any other follow-ups, don't hesitate to contact me.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
Other questions for the treasurer?
Yeah, hey, it's Seth with the Triangle Business Journal.
Hey, Seth, welcome.
Hey, thank you. I was wondering if you could fill out that strategy just a little bit more for me, moving past now beyond the contracting period. So are we moving forward trying to implement this plan without any of the hospital systems? You're continuing negotiations to try to bring someone on board beyond the contracting period? What's kind of the next 6 months look like?
Well, it's obviously the plan does not doesn't take effect till January 1st. Because this plan is so large and because the runway is so long, we have big goals and short deadlines to try to resolve this. But our commitment to clear pricing hasn't changed. But when we're dealing with some entities, Seth, by the way, who stand to make millions of more dollars as a hospital under the clear pricing project, and they still don't sign the contract, there's your sign.
Mm-hmm. So it's kind of to the original point. So do you think that the plan is implementable? The state employees would be well served by the plan if it doesn't have any systems in it? Is there a workaround? Is that what Dan was talking about with consumer protections?
Yes.
Gotcha. And that's kind of just as we're going, a fluid situation.
Yes, and I'm not a Twitter guy. I'm a prop guy. So, but if you go back to some of the tweets from the North Carolina Hospital Association, those that haven't been erased, you'll find that there's even a commitment by them to continue to serve state employees even while these negotiations are going on.
Gotcha. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Seth.
Seth. We appreciate your interest in this.
Thanks, Seth. Thanks for joining us. Anybody else have any questions for the treasurer?
Hi, my name's Julie Havlack with the Carolina Journal. I was wondering, do you have any strategies going forward for bringing the hospitals to sign on? What's the plan going forward?
Well, Julie, you have to stay tuned for that. We can't control what people do. We can, obviously, they're in total control of what all these hospitals do. As evidenced by what I just said, there are hospitals that have knowledge that they're going to make hundreds of thousands, in some instances millions of dollars more, who did not sign this contract. And that's because somebody else other than the Board of Trustees is in control. And so you have to stay tuned for a plan, but we're considering all options. But I don't want, since you're new to our call, I don't want what I said earlier about the fact that we have had nearly 25,000 providers of healthcare in this state who got the assignment, understood the assignment, did their homework, and turned it in on time. Those folks are, throughout this whole process, are going to continue to be not only applauded, but exalted as it relates to understanding that there's a desperate need to have more transparency, give the control back to the consumers so that we can all lower costs.
Good.
Julie, you have a follow-up?
I do have a follow-up, slightly unrelated. I was wondering if the NC Healthcare for Working Families actually gets to the floor and Buy Americal passes. Is there any way that would affect the state health plan?
Well, thank you for your question. We have a policy around here that we try to do, and that is to breathe and stick to our MAT, M-A-T, and no one else's. And so whether it's this issue or the piece of legislation that you just referred to, which when you said it, what came to mind is another piece of legislation, which probably has nothing to do with what you just said, or the certificate of need, or any of these other Medicaid expansion, all these other issues, those are for other people who have a loyalty and duty of care to do what they do, just like we do at the state health plan. And as you know, throughout the country, there are instances of public officials who what they're really good at is not doing their damn job. And I'm trying to be the best state treasurer in North Carolina history, and that's a tall order. And there's a lot of people here, and I can tell you that that's not something that they are good at, is they do their job, and we're going to continue to do that as keepers of the public purse.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Thanks for joining us. Does anyone else have any questions for the treasurer? Great, thank you.
Is Julie the Dan?
I guess she is Dan today.
Yes, I technically, yes. I took over the healthcare beat. I'm the new healthcare reporter.
Oh, okay, excellent, Julie. We'll make sure that you're in the appropriate list. Make sure you get everything for us.
All right, thanks so much.
Treasurer, would you like to have some closing comments?
I just want to thank everybody for attending. I know that healthcare is an issue, and I can tell you that everybody on this call and anybody who's related to anybody on this call has a story about healthcare. I want to read to you, if you'll give me just another moment, Frank, 6 sentences that I think will sort of put a bow on this whole conversation today. To make fully, I'm reading it verbatim.
What is it?
I'll tell you at the end. God, just like a kid at Christmas. Okay. To make fully informed decisions about their health care, patients must know the price and quality of a good or service in advance. With the predominant role that third-party payers and government programs play in the American healthcare system, however, patients often lack both access to useful price and quality information and the incentives to find low-cost, high-quality care. Opaque pricing structures may benefit powerful special interests, such as large hospital systems and insurance companies, but they generally leave patients and taxpayers worse off than would a more transparent system. This is the executive order signed by the President of the United States on June 24th, the executive order on improving price and quality transparency in American healthcare to put patients first. It's not just the President of the United States. It's everybody else in this country who has a story about how healthcare costs and the healthcare experience is consuming them. And I want to say, in case anybody else is still on the line, most of the fuel that we get to continue this strategy of the Clear Pricing Project is coming from doctors who just want a doctor and nurses who just want a nurse. They too are suffering under this medical arms race that we're going through.
Thank you, Treasurer. Thank you all for joining us. As usual, as always, the communications staff here at the Department of State Treasurer is available to answer any questions or inquiries you have. Please contact me directly or press at NC Treasurer. Thank you all very much. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.